Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I'm your architect of business growth and will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we are talking about resources for entrepreneurs. I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, an e-commerce and web development firm, Highland Bank, a locally owned and family-oriented business, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, and Schwegman, Lumberg, Woosner, an intellectual property law firm. All right, hit the subscribe button if you will, and hopefully after you listen to it, you'll be clicking on the like one as well. That will help us deliver better content to you, our fabulous audience. You can also now catch Club E on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and many others. With that, I'd like to introduce today's guest, Justin Grammens of Lab651. You'll find Justin's contact info in the comments field. And Justin, thank you very much for joining us. Justin and I have known one another through the local tech community for several years. Justin, welcome to the show. And why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about it yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Rick. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here and be on the program and share a little bit about myself today. So, as you said, my name is Justin Grammens. I'm a software engineer by trade, is what I would say. But I consider myself more or less a lifelong learner of new technology. And so I've started and founded a number of different companies here in the Twin Cities. I'm very passionate about community, which we'll talk a lot about today. And I'll start there. I started a community called Mobile Twin Cities back when mobile apps were just sort of getting started. I started another group called Arduino MN, which eventually morphed into IoT Fuse. And so we had more than 1,200 members and had conferences and stuff like that around the Internet of Things. Started the first Internet of Things Hack Day, where people would come together and what can you build in 12 hours? What sort of neat connected product IoT device could you build? And ran that organization, and we did many events, and COVID sort of slowed that down a little bit, but we're looking to do more of those in the future. And then most recently, have a new group around artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it's called Applied AI. So those are all community things that we'll touch on a lot about when it comes to business life. As you mentioned, I have a company called Lab651. 651 is the area code. So we are in St. Paul. I guess we're kind of stuck in St. Paul now, but I feel like it shows our local roots to anybody who, as we start branching out. So we are born and bred in St. Paul. I have a company called Recursive Awesome, and I guess to back up, Lab651, what do? We work with companies to implement Internet of Things or connected product solutions. We work with not only building products, but also help companies amplify, like the word you mentioned earlier, amplify. We help them amplify their team and move faster. And so oftentimes companies just can't get products to market fast enough. So we have very highly skilled engineers that can help your team move faster. I also have a company called Recursive Awesome, where we actually deal a lot more in data. So around artificial intelligence and machine learning and data specific to the Internet of Things. You'll hear a common theme here in what I'm saying around Internet of Things and artificial intelligence weekly newsletter called IoT Weekly News. We publish that every week. I am on the podcast. I actually am a moderator / panelist here on a podcast called Conversations on Applied AI. And so we talk all about artificial intelligence and applied artificial intelligence with people that come on. And, when I can, I also teach at the University of St. Thomas here in their graduate programs in software in their master's program. So I keep myself busy.
Absolutely. And there's a couple of personal things, nothing too detailed, but there's going to be a couple of personal things I was going to ask you about. First one is, and I'm always curious kind of what is a driver to people's behavior. What did they see when they were younger that maybe pushed them down a certain road? So you talk about communities, you've started several companies. What about your upbringing or your family of origin or your background kind of led you to be so focused on not just communities, but building communities, being supportive and helping others?
Great question. Some people say maybe it starts with your genes and your parents and some family history. So my mom was a teacher. She taught for Minneapolis public schools for pretty much her entire career. And so I think that's where sort of the education piece comes in. So, and me being a teacher at the University of St. Thomas, but also starting these other organizations, it's got this sort of, I would say, educational feel to it. I really want people to connect and learn from each other. My dad was a physician, and so doctor for his entire career, really involved with people in personal, sides, personal stories. I remember sitting at the dinner table when I was young and just hearing about all the patients that he's working with. And I even jive him like a little bit when I say, look, your job's going away because all these new machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to take the job away. And he always says to me, no one can master that physical touch. Right? You can have all the computers in the world that you want, but patients need to have this physical touch. So I guess I would say it'd be a combination of those two, right? It's think about the educational and the teaching side of it, but then also the more personal physician side. And I guess I'm a byproduct of that.
That's interesting because through Club E and other groups I've been involved in, I ran the Minnesota Venture Capital Association many years ago, and started a golf fundraiser for my high school that's still going 25 years later. So I too have built a bunch of communities, and I just chuckled a little bit. My mother also was a teacher. My father was a dentist. So I'm sure some of your dinner room table conversations were similar to ours. So it's kind of funny that you and I are on those paths. And then the other thing I found out as I learned a little bit more about you for today's event is you have a couple of boys, grade school age, and that is also something that you enjoy and keeps you busy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They keep me on my toes, and it's a lot of fun to be able to watch them grow and learn, get into sports. I can start to, I didn't really know where my life was going to go, what if I was going to have kids or not, or anything like that. But it's one of these things that, I will say I love them more than anything in the entire world. And it's just been a complete life-changing event, and really, really very, very special to me.
Okay. And then something else that's special that you have passion for is running marathons. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that started off as a bucket list item in 2019. And I had always sort of gone out and ran, but I would say the farthest I ever ran was 10 miles. And in 2019, I saw a marathon that I wanted to do in January of 2020. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. And so I got on a training plan. And, it's one of these things that I think the more you can plan for, and we'll talk about that with regards to communities and business and stuff like that too. But I think going into a situation when you have a clearly defined plan of what you want to do really, really helps. And so getting on a marathon training plan, I use this plan by a guy named Hal Higdon. And it really lays it out to you. Run this on this day, run this on this day, everything for 18 weeks or so. And at the end of it, you should be as best as you can to walk into this marathon and go ahead and run 26.2 miles. And so I did the marathon in January of 2020. It was in Florida. So I wasn't exposed to a lot of the cold, but I had to train in the cold. So it really forced my mind to overcome a lot of mental battles, right? And these battles can be physical, but they can also be attacking people. If you're starting a business, you're an entrepreneur, you know all about this. Just a lot of the stresses and strains of just keeping your business going. And so what I found was as I trained for this marathon and I went through and I was out running in -10, -20 degree weather. It really forced me to say, you know what? I mean, just focus on the next thing ahead of you. Just focus on the next mile. Don't focus on the 26 miles. Just focus on the next mile to get to the next point. And so I ran the marathon and happy to complete it. And my wife asked me, are you going to do it again? Or is this a one and done thing? And I'm like, absolutely not a one and done thing. I'm absolutely going to do this again because I feel like I can go better. And for me, it's just getting faster. And so every marathon, I've been working on training harder and getting faster and faster. And, I ran the Twin Cities Marathon just here. And I will say my first marathon was 4 hours and 40 minutes. And the last one I did was 3 hours and 35 minutes. So nice. I shaved an hour and 5 minutes off of my marathon time over these past 6 marathons that I've run. And just want to continue to push myself and get better. But I found that going through this physical exercise and physical training really starts my day off good. because it really throws a lot of, I guess, activity into my brain as I'm working my body. But then I also feel like, okay, I'm set, I'm ready for the day. Whatever else comes at me is probably going to be easier than what I just went through this morning when I had to run. And some of these training things this weekend, I'm running, 8 miles on Saturday and 18 miles on Sunday. And so it really forces me to really get up and get moving.
Nice. Well, I'm totally with you on that one too. Often I will do a variety of things. And for a number of years, I've been balancing weight training and yoga. So I'm with you 100% on building the focus and the mental clarity and such. And that's actually a good message for our listeners out there today. So shifting gears, clearly building communities is your thing. You have a lot of passion for it. How have you seen building these communities as helpful to their businesses and to you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, I touched a little bit on it with regards to the mental aspect. I think as a human, we really thrive when we meet other people and we can connect and share ideas. So I think just at that surface level, as you engage with the community, you start to meet people. These are people that you potentially would have never met if you hadn't actually taken the steps of reaching out and attending these events. And I'll say attending either virtually or in person, but you're starting to hear new perspectives, right? And as an entrepreneur, you always need to see what's going on, not only in the market that you're focused in, but also what's going on in other markets as well. And so I think, you get a chance to get exposed to new thoughts, new ideas. I also think that, being an entrepreneur and running a business, it's all about networking and more or less, I would say, relationships. So you never know when you're going to find the next co-founder, right? That could be at one of these things. You never know when you're going to find the next employee. Of course, you never know when you're going to find the next potentially business deal or next client or customer. And so the more you get out and talk to people, the more opportunities you have to share your story, learn their story, and talk a little bit about, where you want to take your business. I would also say, finally, there's this whole idea of advancing your career, and whether you're in your business today for the long term or you're in it for the short term or whatever, at some point you got to look at where you're going overall, and so you might learn of a new opportunity to take a job somewhere, something you hadn't really ever thought of. Well, okay, why don't I explore this opportunity or those opportunities? So as an entrepreneur, it is just a wealth of information that's waiting to be tapped.
And I too have enjoyed through the Club E community to get co-founders together. I mentioned to you ahead of the show here that Centera, Sentera, one of my portfolio companies, had them involved in the early days of that company through Club E. And so I too have been connecting founders for a number of years. And I might have you beat. I actually have a couple that got married that I introduced at a Club E event. So can you say that?
I cannot. No, that's absolutely wonderful. Great to hear.
Right. No finder's fee though. So that was just a do good thing on my part. All right. So talk a little bit about how building a community is different than just having the kind of standard networking event without really a purpose behind it per se.
Yeah. I mean, I some people think of networking as just sort of the creme de la creme of the reason as to why you're attending these, but I really view it as an opportunity for people to work together. And in all these communities that I've started, and these meetup groups and these conferences, I'm really looking to have people learn from each other and collaborate. And it's one of these ideas of, the rising tide lifts all boats. And so usually, again, a community can be as big or as broad as you want it to be. In fact, I oftentimes try and make them be somewhat broad, so they're not just so narrowly focused in a certain area where everyone's talking the same language and they only know their own language and vocabulary. But I view these communities as sort of organic. And once you get them started, they can continue to grow without actually even me being there anymore, right? So you view this as an ecosystem, and it's a system that can continue to grow on its own by people actually doing and building relationships together. And oftentimes in these communities, we will work on workshops together, right? We will work on building. That's what I was talking about, the Internet of Things, for example, like this hack day. People are coming in and they're building things and they're learning from each other, sort of elbow to elbow in this space. And companies are being formed. There's actually been a number of companies that came out of these events that were actually started over a weekend. And those are the types of things that I think are completely different than going just to a random networking event where you just pass around business cards, right? And so, hey, what do you do? I'm an attorney. What do you do? I'm a banker, whatever, There's nothing wrong with those types of events, but I say, what I try and do is really try and build something that is going to withstand the test of time. That is going to actually, people come in, they share, they learn information, and they go home better than, of course, when they showed up, but they want to come back next time. And again, like I say, I could step away from it and the community will continue to go.
So for somebody who wants to get involved with building a community, whether it's something that's already up and running and they just want to take it to the next level, or a new idea that they have, what are some of the tools that they could use to build their community, and where do they get started?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with passion, first of all. So whenever you're going into this, you got to make sure that it's something that you are 100% behind and passionate about. I wouldn't have done any of these communities that I talked about if it wasn't something that I was personally driven by, that I personally wanted to get better at. So come in with that mindset, I would say, for sure. When it comes to tools, I started some of my first communities, and Rick, I know you've started a bunch, clubs and whatnot. There was no thing called Meetup before. And Meetup, in my mind, is kind of a beautiful thing in that it actually, number one, it can help you market to people that you would never be able to touch. And then also it provides, the hosting and all of the registration and all those types of things for it. So I would advocate for looking at something like Meetup, for example, as a good sort of starting point, and seeing what communities are out there that already exist. And then B, if there isn't one that really is satisfying exactly the angle that you want to bring it from, or bring it to, or talk about, then start your own. And, you can start Googling for other events that are going on out there and seeing how yours might be slightly different. This is everything from conferences to, of course, using other social media platforms. So LinkedIn is great. And all these communities, that I've been involved in, it's more or less a LinkedIn, message out saying, hey, I'm interested in building this. Who wants to help me? And what I found in all these situations is if you raise the flag up the flagpole, chances are somebody else out there wants to be a part of it as well. And so use LinkedIn, use Facebook, use Twitter, use any social media thing to basically say, I'm looking to start this. And I think you will be surprised to see the amount of hands that want to come in and help you either co-found it, or, hey, I'll speak at an event, or, hey, I'll share my knowledge with the community, or, hey, I want to sponsor this, hey, do you need pizza bot? Do you need help on the meetup fees? Meetup now is no longer free. So, you just start asking and start building this. But it kind of starts with you asking for help and using using social media, I would say, using Meetup, and just starting to get sort of a core team going. Once you have that kernel going, the fire will start to go.
All right, shift gears a little bit. Other passion area for you, other than the communities, IoT and AI. For the companies that aren't deep domain experts, how might they start to explore how IoT and AI technology might improve their products, or maybe they have some product extensions, but where does a company even go to start?
Good question. I tell companies they should start with a business case, right? So let's what sort of problem are you having in your business, or what are some costs that are some things are going on in your business that are costing too much? What are some processes that maybe could be improved, and how could you then apply technologies like the Internet of Things, which is broadly sensors and collection of information at the edge, and then artificial intelligence to then do something with that. But let's not start with the technology first. Let's talk about your business use case, right? And then I advocate for you to calculate some costs, right? So what is that costing you today? And because we're going to use that later on. And so once we figure out, oh, okay, it's taking X number of dollars for me to send this service technician out to this place. We have a lot of failure rates on this particular piece of equipment. What if we knew about that ahead of time? So there has to be some sort of cost or reason as to why you're doing that. Then you sort of set about a plan. And oftentimes I tell organizations, you need to bring in all members of the organization. It can't just be one person in engineering that has an idea and they're just going to start working on this. I have lots of experience with regards to that. You need to bring in marketing. You need to bring in the technicians in the field, the salespeople, the engineering, of course, but even some people in the C-suite, where it be CTO, CIO, CEO. They need to understand the business use case as to why you're doing this, and then actually be able to contribute input into it. And then this maybe seems simple, but like start small, right? Like let's just start working on a proof of concept, a minimum viable product, something that you can kind of turn quickly and show some results within, a couple weeks to a month or two. Not this huge grandiose, we're going to spend $1 million and we'll develop something in a year or so. And you start the experiment, and then you start actually calculating ROI. And after that point, you start realizing, okay, I'm getting this data now. How can I actually, use the technology now to improve the business? And you make a decision, go, no go. Do we continue to move forward? Do we iterate again? Do we shut the program down? Or is it just off by 5 degrees, right? Oh, we're getting this data, but you know what? Actually, if we get this data in addition to it, or we pull in this third party piece of software, for example, we can combine it into something that we hadn't really thought of. So really around that idea of sort of build, measure, learn. It's this idea that the lean startup sort of promotes. And you want to know when you should cut your losses per se, but I think going into it with that type of an architecture, that type of a structure, is the best way to go. And that's how I've seen companies leverage the technology to make something then that continues to evolve and improve over time.
Let's talk about business model for a moment. There's a number of companies in the Brimacombe Capital portfolio that utilize the recurring revenue model. I know that there's a number of reasons to do that. It's sticky, it's predictable. You can plan, investors and buyers put higher multiples on it, number of other reasons. But how have you seen companies use IoT and AI to move from a more product-focused company to one that has a recurring services or recurring revenue model?
Yeah. I think the one main obvious one is something like if you have a consumable, for example, and one of the companies that I work with is Kenmore. So think of appliances. And if you want to sell more water filters, you want to sell more dishwashing liquid, you can start understanding how people are utilizing their appliances and then prompting them at the right time. We also work with craftsmen, and so they want to be able to sell more batteries, for example, for their lawnmowers. They have large riding lawnmowers. So these are things that you can tell consumers ahead of time. This thing is going to fail at some point, or it's wearing out. Here's some more consumables. I also think I touched on a little bit earlier on predictive maintenance. So you have whether it be something on a factory floor or you have something that's out in the field. There are certain maintenance rituals that need to happen with these devices, and it can be anything from something that's on the power grid, for example, or we deal also with a company that does paint mixers. So paint mixers at Lowe's and Home Depot, they didn't really know what was going on with these paint mixers out in the field. They'd get a call and somebody would say, it's just not working today. So now they need to drive somebody out and try and figure out what's going on, where if they had remote access to it, they actually would be able to see and predict ahead of time, certain parts are going to fail here. It's vibrating off, right? There's error codes that are coming off of the machine. So now with this connectivity, they're able to see that ahead of time, and all this data that's sort of coming in, they can apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to start and say, look, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that a human wouldn't be able to understand, but if we start actually running it through models, it will start to learn and figure out where these things are going to fail. So predictive maintenance is basically another huge area. And that's an example of a company that, they just manufactured machines for decades. And now they're starting to change their business model. They're saying, well, geez, if we can, more than just being able to sell a physical machine and walking away from it, now we can sell a service that will help you maintain that machine over months and years. And that was revenue that was quite often just lost, in the past. I would say another interesting place is actually charging per use of things that are out in the field. So another company that we worked with is, they basically lay down de-icing material in like parking lots and sort of like large areas. And, they're the people that are out with the snow plows, they're plowing stuff, and they're basically de-icing large areas. Well, imagine if you could actually charge per, gallon you lay down, as opposed to just charging flat fees of how much, is there. And imagine if you could then understand we're using more here or less here, and then, start to basically predict how much they should be mixing up and how much they should be buying on the supply side. And a lot of that stuff was not visible. It just was clearly not visible to these companies, and it really hasn't been until recently. And so we built connected products in that way, where now they can say, okay, over the course of a week, a month, a year, per season, this is exactly how much we're using in these particular areas. And it helps change their entire business model, not only from the supply side, but also who they market to, where these plows are at. As simple as that. I wouldn't say simple, but GPS location, now they can track where these things are at. And so, yeah, it's again, these businesses that are used to just selling a physical thing and kind of walking away and saying, here you go, here's your product, have fun with it. Now they can continue to engage with their customers and provide value over the entire lifespan of that product.
So between all these communities that you're involved with and have grown, and all these companies that you've started, you've seen many companies get up and running. What advantages have you seen for the low-code platforms to these companies who are just getting started?
Yeah, well, I guess, there's this whole movement, I think, that maybe some people know about, maybe some others don't, but this sort of low-code / no-code platforms. And I've been a software engineer for 20 some years. And, when I started, all of this stuff was hand coded. You had to write a lot of code. And, if we were to take some of the examples around the Internet of Things, you would actually have to write a lot of assembly code, down on these microcontrollers, for example, and you have to figure out, oh, how do I talk to the cellular network or whatever? And just a lot of code needed to be written. And now, as we're getting, in software development's been going on for decades now, and open source, I think, is a huge, helpful aspect of that. Is as companies want to get into this space, that they really need to go fast. They need to try and put something out in the field fast, and they also need to do it pretty cheaply, because, as I say, you don't really know what you don't know going into these situations. Who would know that? Oh, if I were able to measure, this de-icing solution, what the value is going to be to the company. A lot of companies don't know going into that, yet. Yes, they'll do some financial models like I talked about earlier on, but the other side of that equation is how much is it going to cost to build? And so if you can take a look at some of these low-code, no-code platforms, and that can be anything from like an Appian is an example in like the mobile app space. We also use a thing called App Sheets, but it's these platforms sort of built on top of existing infrastructure that can essentially allow you to sort of point and click and say, I can set up a place for this data to come in. I need to have it go into this database, and I need to generate a report that looks like this. And 10 years ago or so, you would have to write all of that sort of end to end. And you would need actually a number of different types of software engineers to build that out. And so I really encourage companies, as they get into this new space, this new technology space, whether it be IoT, AI, whatever they get, be it Bitcoin, all that sort of like emerging technologies areas, I would say, utilize some off-the-shelf solutions as much as possible as you get started. And if you just Google for no code, like low code / no code platforms, you'll find just a bunch of them that are out there.
All right. Hey, the first venture fund that I did was at Sherpa Partners. I had a couple of partners there, 2 other guys and myself. We used interns, and we used folks in their MBA program to act as analysts for us. How do you think startups should think about utilizing interns and graduates from local colleges when they start to build their next product?
Yeah, no, I think interns and college grads are a missed resource for any company as they're starting to build new products. And I'll tell you why in particular. When you're building something new, typically you're using and implementing some piece of new technology. And you have sort of 2 choices. Well, you have a lot of choices, I guess, what I would say. But from an engineering standpoint, it's kind of new for everybody. And whether it be a person coming out of school from an engineering program or somebody that has 20 years of experience, you are actually starting at the same starting line, right? I mean, when the iPhone hit the market, everyone was learning how to use this device and how to program it. And I got in early, and a bunch of other people got in early, but I was no better than a college intern at that point, to be honest. I mean, yes, I had a little bit more years behind me when it came to engineering, but we were all learning how we were going to actually use this new thing called the iPhone. And so I think companies really need to look at, okay, when you're developing this, do you really need the 20-year engineer, or could you actually get a lot more different perspective, right, from somebody coming out of school, because they actually might be taught more modern tools. And then, also from, as I was talking about cost, the price point is much, much less when you hire somebody that's just coming out of school. I also believe that there is sort of another intrinsic piece of this, which is, a lot of people that start at your company when they're young, they're going to stick around. I know companies that I started at when I was first out of school where I felt a little bit more loyalty. I definitely felt like, wow, I actually was a part of this team that was building this new thing. It wasn't like, oh, here's this legacy product that you get a chance to jump on and just kind of tweak the knobs here and there. It's like, no, they brought me in and they had a lot of trust and value in me. And I actually want to see this thing through. So I think looking at, whether it be interns, some interns work over the summer. We work a lot with interns even during the school year, because a lot of interns can manage 10, 12 hours a week. They are often they're much more interested in working at your company than they are for the local cafeteria, or whatever it is, And so they're really, really motivated to work with you. And I think it's a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs to take a look at people coming out of school.
Shifting gears again, pivot to software development and your experience in that universe. Those relationships are not always the easiest, and some of them work fabulously and others a little bit more on the rocky side. What should a startup look for in a software development partner? And then number two, what can they do over time so that relationship can be as positive as possible?
Yeah. Well, I've been developing software, like I said, for more than 20 years and doing it for all sorts of companies, small, medium, large. And if I am, and I will also say, I am a startup myself, and I have actually started a number of different companies where we're applying artificial intelligence to all sorts of new different areas. So I've sat in both seats. And I would say what makes the relationship strong is somebody who can come into your organization and they're just honest, right? They're honest about what their capabilities are and what they think they can do with your business and how they think they can help. And I think it's a two-way street. You need to be open to hearing some outside opinions, but also be open to having somebody sharing opportunities of what they think is different about your business or how your business could be different. And, when I go back to some of the connected products or some of the connected things I was talking about earlier, these businesses need to be thought about. It's a mind, change. It's like, oh, we're not just going to sell a physical good anymore. Now we're going to sell these services. And so, look for a software development partner that is giving you new ideas, things you haven't thought of. And ideally some experience that they've done, right? So do they have prior work that they've done? Have they done something in a similar business or built a similar type of product where you can say, okay, yes, they've executed on this before. This isn't sort of their first rodeo. And these are people that are bringing new ideas to the table, and they're not just sort of working 9 to 5. That's what I look for. I look for employees of my company to do that, but also when I engage with outside third parties, I really want somebody who said, I was out running this morning and I had an idea, right? Or I was driving to work, and I was working on the weekend or whatever. I was mowing the lawn and I had an idea, right? Those to me was like, okay, great. This is the type of organization that I want to work with, because they're not just viewing it as a financial transaction. They are actually bringing a lot of value to it. As it works over time, then, how do you continue to sort of like foster that? I guess it would probably come down to just communication and making sure that, they continue to bring value, to you. And so, that's what I try and strive to do. I mean, a lot of these, bring it back to the communities and like the organizations and stuff like that. I really try and just foster connections. And, if you look at it like a hub or like a wheel, I try and be in the center of these conversations. And whether it benefits me or it benefits my clients that I work with, it's kind of irrelevant. I'm really always trying to bring ideas and say, hey, I think you should talk to this person. I think Joe should talk to Jane, whoever it is. And I don't need to be in the middle of all of it, but that's one of the byproducts of actually building these communities is you're actually actively creating relationships between two organizations and helping to see them grow. And that is valuable. And I think, and in a software development partner, I think that's what you're going to want. It shouldn't be, it's only my business that's going to be working with you. It should be, you know what, we aren't the experts in that. I think you should talk to this other company. And that you need to be able to see that and work through that.
All right, so we've covered a number of different things today. Started off with the dining room table for you growing up, with your mother being a teacher and your father being a physician and some of that stuff. Went through community building and some technology angles here, software development. As you look at your career and you kind of have enough of a history, said you've been doing development now for 20 plus years. Is there a lesson that you learned along the way that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is a lesson that I kind of just learned over the past couple of years. I found myself, this was, like I say, up until a couple of years ago, I found myself just getting started at the beginning of my day and opening up my email. And that's how I would literally start my day. And what I realized was that I was reacting to everything that was going on. I was just sitting there and fires were coming in left and right. And this would be, again, will resonate for people that are, an entrepreneur. Fires are coming in left and right, and I'm continually putting them out. At the end of the day, I'm worn out, I'm wasted, and I take a look at what I was supposed to get done today, and nothing has gotten done. And, I listened to a lot of, personal coaching books and stuff like that. And this woman, Mel Robbins is her name. She said, the moment you open up email, somebody else's problems become your problem. And so which is completely true. And so what I realized probably a couple of years ago, and I really wish I would have done this like 20 years ago, quite frankly, is plan your day, right? And so I really try and carve out at least 30 to 45 minutes at the beginning of the day to say, this is exactly what I want to do today. The idea of plan the work and work the plan was always kind of like, okay, that's cool. I'll do that in other aspects. But, when it comes to my business or my work, I just want to jump right in. I just want to answer the emails and do all that type of stuff. And so, what I would say is just as a little bit of healthy advice and things that I still find myself slipping into that, unfortunately, but I get up a little earlier and I do whatever you want to do in the morning. Like I say, I go out and run and whatever it is, but I always make sure that before I open up that inbox, man, I actually have a plan for what I want to do today. And I go into it with a strategic plan, not just reactionary, and just write that stuff down of just 1 to 2 items you want to get done at the end of the day. I often find that I just actually close email. I mute my phone, and I just make sure I just move the ball forward just a little bit, every day. So get into a mode of planning rather than being reactionary. That would be my big piece of advice that I've learned.
I love that. Love that very much. And there's aspects of that I do well, and other aspects that you just spurred me on to work a little harder. So thank you for sharing that with me and our audience. All right, as we think about today's topic and the conversation that we've just had, is there one key takeaway that you'd like the audience to remember and reflect upon?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about communities, and I think I mentioned a little bit about it earlier, but maybe I didn't stress it enough, is ask for help. So the community isn't just you, and the community it shouldn't just be you carrying the torch all the time. And I think at the beginning of it has to be some sort of an idea of where things start, but as a entrepreneur, and we talk about resources for entrepreneurs, I think entrepreneurs need to be more open to asking for help and asking for support. And whether it be you form your own advisory board, that's one thing that I personally just started doing this year, which has been a really big game changer for me. Or you decide to start a community and you raise this flag up the flagpole saying, hey, I find this interesting. Anybody else want to help me build this group, or anybody else want to help share this? Yeah, I would encourage people to ask for help more as like a major takeaway. And whether it be in your business, your personal life, whatever it is, ask for help. And I think you'll be really surprised. At least I've been very surprised in my career of the people that will step up and say, hey, Justin, yep, I'm willing to help here. Let's work together.
Justin Grammens is our guest today. Justin, the website for your company is lab651.com. Again, lab, L-A-B 651.com. I know that you are very open to talking to people out there who maybe have a question, or as you said, need a little help. Justin, how would somebody get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out?
Yeah, I think just sending me an email would be great, justin@lab651.com, or looking for me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name, Justin Grammens.
And the spelling on the last name is?
Grammens.
All right, Justin, hey, good conversation today. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you at one of your communities sometime soon. I know that we've crossed paths many times in the past, and look forward to having you at some of our clubby events. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Rick, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you do with these events, right? This is great source of knowledge and information sharing, and you're providing a platform for everybody to learn from it. So I commend you on you building your community and your organization. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Justin. Talk to you soon.
Sure.